Okay, we're back with episode 2, where I am furiously trying to keep a spaghetti rocket from tipping over. And another thing I noticed, this is not related to the mission, but I just got finished editing episode 1, and the audio is slower than the video for some reason. So I had to speed it up by 0.2%. So if my voice sounds 0.2% like a chipmunk, you know why. So anyway, stage separation went nicely, and Bob is hopefully not going to die this time. I don't remember. This is my first time watching this. So we're in orbit, and I'm doing the Moho transfer. Which I'm not exactly sure, but I might have launched into orbit the wrong way, so instead of helping the plane change burn, it actually doesn't help the plane change burn one bit. So it all works out in the end, though. Oh. Sorry, I just realized that in my version I didn't update the 1 hour thing to 2 hours, but I did update it's for the 3rd hour, so I'll have to change that. But anyway, so this is the escape burn. I think I might end up dividing this one to 2, or maybe not. I don't remember. Yeah, this is one shot. So yeah, going to Moho. Periapsis is down there, and the radiators are glowing a bit hot, but you know, that's fixed with a bit of time warp. And already the side pods of nuclear engines are almost out of fuel. So by doing the plane change up high, we can save a lot of fuel. The ascending node is only at 0.3 degrees this far in. And my side booster just ran out of fuel, except I don't notice for a while. Like, I'm literally doing this burn, not noticing. Oh, and now I notice, and I decouple it, and it destroys half of my solar panels and radiators. Very helpful, side boosters. You're doing a good job. So, Moho transfers for me are more of a process like I would do a rendezvous than I would a normal interplanetary transfer, because they don't take as long, and they're, in my opinion, they're easier to do like you would normally do a rendezvous. Taking multiple orbits to get there. Anyway, we have a close approach set up, and now we're time warping. Except we're not time warping, we're doing a maneuver. We're just making our approach closer, even though it was fine before, except I didn't think it was fine because I was being OCD about my orbital mechanics. So eventually I get one that's fine, but it might take me a few minutes. Note to self, be less picky with trajectories. Anyway, that's good. That's good. Time warping, and we're at Moho. So now we do a standard braking burn into orbit, which is fairly straightforward, except I started a bit too early. Sorry for the yawning. And congratulations, Bob, you're in orbit around a fiery ball of rock. Well, I mean, the hot ball of rock orbiting a literal ball of fire, but you know, whatever. Anyway, we're checking for contracts again, not that it really matters. At this point, the world's first rewards are funding my space program pretty well. And I'm taking the lander down to the surface of Moho. Except I'm going to go around back to do my deorbit burns so that I can land during the day. Although I do have ambient light turned up to like 35% so that nights aren't pitch black like they usually are. That really helps. And Knobs landed on Moho. So we do a little bit of science. There's not very much to do since we didn't bring any actual experiments. And 2 hours 18 minutes and 16 seconds was on the flag. I quickly typed that. So it's not bad. Moho, Duna, Ike, Minmus, and the Mun. That's 5 planets or bodies or whatever you want to call them in just 2 hours 15 minutes ish. Definitely room for optimization, but that's pretty good. So I'm doing a fast rendezvous. I've built many a space station in my time, so I know how to do them pretty fast. However, this docking, I think, it's either this one or a different one that I really didn't get right. Nope, I got it right first time. It must be the Dres docking, I think. Or maybe the Elu docking. Or maybe, there's one of the planets I didn't actually dock at, but, yeah. So at this point, I time warp again until the Moho approaches the ascending or descending node for Kerbin, so that the plane change is easier. Like a reverse of what I did on the way here. And more fiddling with maneuver node. There's going to be a lot of that, although not as much as you'd expect if you've played this game for any amount of time. Sorry about the yawning. I said that already, didn't I? Maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm just making a fool of myself whenever I open my mouth, which is probably true. So either you're watching this right now and you're thinking, oh, he's really funny, or you're watching this and thinking, when is this guy going to stop talking? Again, like I said in the first video, if this is taking too long and you don't like my voice, put the video on ×2 speed, mute it, and then put a playlist in the background. Anyway, back to the game. We're doing the escape burn, and Apoapsis is at Kerbin's orbital altitude now. So we go time warping until the descending node, and then do a plane change burn, which is easier at Apoapsis, or near Apoapsis, which is the whole reason why we did the...
Is this time to take this thing off?
That's just my grandma, so...
Didn't seem to pick everything up that I wanted it to pick up.
And we're doing more maneuvers to get a closer encounter to Kerbin. I tried, like, burning full on retrograde, but it turns out that the only real efficient transfer will take like a year and a half in game time, which I was trying to optimize, but I couldn't. So I just bit the bullet and time warped all the way around, which you'll see in a second. And the last nuclear transfer stage ran out of fuel, so now I'm on the last stage, which is just a conventional LV-909 bipropellant engine. Just over 2 hours and 30 minutes in. And fine-tuning the trajectory so that we get a low periapsis in Kerbin's atmosphere. And again, we're running a little bit on fuel, like a little bit low on fuel, I mean. So now we're time warping. Yeah, that's gonna get old quickly. I need to think of something else to talk about during these long time warps. Like, what can I talk about? I can talk about drawing. No, I can talk about Minecraft. I can talk about the epic thumb war of 1997, if that's even a thing. Anyway, so I'm now that time warp's over, I can not focus on what to talk about during time warp. So we're re-entering, and parachutes are being deployed, except it's taking too long. So, yeah. I later discovered that with this capsule design, I can actually cut one of the parachutes and be perfectly fine. And oh look, it's like just staying there. My mouse doesn't do anything, probably because I might have gone to the bathroom during that, or maybe I was outside during that, because, you know, again, I don't want to stand in front of the screen forever. So now I'm going back into the vehicle assembly building, and I think Dres is next. Yep, Dres. So for Dres, I don't really do that much different. I think I cut it down to a single core of nuclear engines and added another stage to the rocket, as well as ditching the antenna because I don't really need it, and completely ditching the probe core so the vessel is slightly lighter. And I also remove 4 of the 7 nuclear engines and add more fuel tanks to the top stage so that I have more Delta V up there. And this is just me fiddling with the staging, and good news, Bob is not going to die anymore because Jeb's in the rocket now because we don't need a scientist, so I wonder how many times will Jeb die. And 3, 2, 1. Except not 3, 2, 1 because I forgot I have to time warp to the Dres window. So time warping during time warps. Yeah, time warps aren't really long enough to talk about stuff. And guess what? I didn't even have enough thrust to take off, so I had to revert, or at least I recovered so I could avoid time warping that much. So I added some more boosters because you know that's the only thing you can do in Kerbal. You add more boosters. Every good player knows that more boosters and more struts are the only two things that matter. Well, ish. So I lift off and the boosters are jiggling around a bit. The entire rocket is flying more like spaghetti than I hoped it would. And actually the boosters burn out and I don't jettison them because I still don't have enough thrust. I actually enable crossfeed on the decouplers and just keep them there for a while to have the extra thrust. Because that's an awful heavy core for one engine to lift. So I eventually get rid of him, and my rocket goes completely spaghetti, so I adjust some of the auto struts. By the way, I turned advanced tweakables on, so I do have the auto struts. And eventually we recover from that flip. That's the second flip of the game, I think. Maybe it's the third. I think it's the second. So the second stage is now firing, and eventually we get into an orbit. This totally isn't an awkward silence. So while I was playing this game, I had a playlist running in the background. It's the playlist of a bunch of music that I'm going to be playing trombone on for a trip to Europe, a band trip to Europe. So I was just letting it play in the background, so maybe I'd absorb it. At the time that I recorded this, I'd only practiced the music a few times, so it was good to hear it some more. But, you know, after a while, the same 11 songs over the course of 8 hours gets a bit boring, so. Anyway, we're doing the escape burn now, which does take a while. I think I did split this one into 2 orbits, but maybe I didn't. I probably did, because the nuclear transfer stage has less, like about half the thrust of the old one. So it's a bit, it takes a lot longer to burn the same amount of fuel. Yep, I do a second orbit around. Except my maneuver node glitches out because I can't actually postpone an orbit and have the same amount remaining left, so I have to eyeball it. And another thing, I had accidentally left Discord open while I was recording this, so I kept getting little pings, but if I had alt-tabbed out of full screen, the recording would have stopped, which is not a good thing to have happen. And that would mean it would be hard to calculate my actual time. Although I did have a timer running in the background and a timer, like a physical timer running on my desktop. So I finished the escape burn, and now I'm time warping into the maneuver node. So then I do the maneuver, which is mostly a plane change, but I think it also has some prograde to it, or maybe it's retrograde. Yeah, it's prograde. So which gives me a close encounter with Dres, which I then fine-tune for a bit, except I need to get a bit closer to fine-tune it. I was a bit too far away. I could have used the thrust limiter, but that would have taken too much time. So this far away, I again attempt to do the fine-tuning again, while quick-saving a lot, hopefully. And then I get to perigee, whatever you want to call it. Everyone uses perigee, but we use periapsis for everything. And after a while, we are in orbit of Dres. Unfortunately, the time limit for recording is 2 hours, and at this point, the 2 hours ran out, and it was another like 36 seconds before I realized that the recording was stopped. So I started the recording back up a few seconds later, and I had quick loaded to the point where I needed to do the Dres capture burn again. So I do that again. We're going pretty fast relative to Dres because I did a high energy transfer, which is good for time but bad for fuel, usually. And now we're in orbit safely. So I transferred Jeb over the lander, which is an identical copy of the Moho lander, except for I don't think there's a probe core on this one. So landing on Dres is fairly straightforward. It's about the same as the Mun. And Jeb is on Dres, so I think that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6 out of 14, and then I put Dres does not exist. Yeah, everyone knows Dres does not exist. Sorry, Max Creative, but Dres does not exist. Dres is a lie. That's one joke you won't get unless you frequent the forums. So I get a good rendezvous right off the bat, and I come in for a docking attempt. Actually, I don't come in for a docking attempt. I just EVA over because the docking will take too much time. And there's really no reason to dock at that point because I don't need to reuse the lander for anything. So now I try to get a intercept back with Kerbin, which I do the same like as a Moho bird. Like, more like a normal rendezvous because I don't want to warp to the window, I think. Because I think another window was coming up fairly soon, and I really didn't want to have 2 missions running at the same time. And that's the Dres escape burn done. And now we're time warping again. So instead of just saying time warping, I'm just gonna, you know, hold as long as possible. So why did I do that? Oh, nice.
Break the fourth wall.
Yeah. As soon I'm gonna run out of things to do during time warping learn, so get used to the awkward silence or me going ah. Anyway, so that was the last of the fuel in the nuclear transfer stage, and now we're on the conventional stage, which is the same as the Moho stage but with 2 extra drop tanks. And at this point, I realized that I think I burned too far, and I have to burn back to get a Kerbin intercept on the same orbit. And that's my Kerbin encounter, and now I can time warp. Yeah. It's in game. It's like year 9, halfway through year 9 already. So if this was an in-game speedrun, you can definitely do better than that. We're 3 hours and 17 minutes in-ish right now. So now it's year 10. And I think at this point I go back to the Space Center for some reason or other. Probably contracts again. Yep, it's contracts. Except now, it's actually, I think it's time for the Jool window, if I'm right. Yeah, probably the Jool window. So at this point, I have to build my Jool 5 mothership. I'm going to try and do all 5 in a single vehicle. So this is going to take a while of building. So I used the same 3 core. I have the middle nuclear stage doing 4 nuclear engines, and the outer 2 doing 3 each. And at this point, I go to another craft file to build the Tylo lander, I believe. Which is no... Tylo is a bit difficult, but then now I realize I forgot to I forgot to research command seats, so I really quickly popped into the research and development to get command seats. Because that's really the easiest way to do Tylo. It's the lightest way to do Tylo, especially since aerodynamics don't matter on Tylo. So I really quickly do a design, 3 engines per core, and then there's a bunch of fuel. I try to do fuel lines, but I accidentally connect the fuel lines to the decouplers into the tanks, and then I save that as a sub-assembly. And next I need to build the Lathe lander, which is, in my opinion, the hardest Joule 5 moon to get right on the first try. In second place being Tylo. So and I didn't actually test this one beforehand. So I put an LVT-45 in the middle, along with decouplers and landing legs. Then nose cones, and then equipment for landing on lathe, which includes parachutes, and then I have some fins that I stick on there, I think. They're actually just like rotated elevons. I retract the gear, I add a heat shield. I forget if I add air brakes or not. Yep, I do add air brakes. And then I save that one as a sub-assembly, and then I go back to my actual Joule mothership. Which, you know, it's weird because there aren't really many mounting spaces for these sort of landers. So at first I try sticking everything on top, but then I realize that's going to be even more spaghetti than the last rocket was. So I actually just stick the Tylo lander on the side there, and then rotate it so it's not clipping into anything. And then I just stick the Lathe lander on the other side, I think, and which is, you know, if this thing already wasn't unaerodynamic, it's certainly, definitely not aerodynamic now, because I've just got the big Lathe lander hanging off the side. So I add some more reaction wheels to the mothership to compensate for that, and yeah, it's definitely off-center. And just to make sure nothing falls off, I attach a bunch of struts to everything, and also add some more engines to the Lathe lander in case it doesn't have the thrust to take off, which is definitely a possibility. The LVT-45 and 30 have a lot less thrust than they look like they have. And then I just make sure everything's all in working order. This is the one mission you don't want to mess up because there's so much that can go wrong. And I also take the time to upgrade the lifter by adding a vacuum engine to the bottom stage, as well as another set of boosters, I believe. And I set up the whole thing for asparagus staging. And checking over the whole thing, and since Jeb's on a mission, Valentina will pilot this one. How many times will she die? Probably not as much as Bob. Yeah. And I launch, and luckily the whole thing isn't shaking itself apart immediately, although it does want to turn in the direction of the heavy Lathe lander. Originally, it was my plan to do like an ISRU ship, and have dedicated landers for both Lathe and Tylo, and then just use the mothership for the other moons, and then refuel on the other moons, so I didn't have to make the ship as big. But then I realized it wouldn't be worth it. And look, oh no, my middle stage has exploded, and I only have the outer stage. So I just transfer all the fuel from the middle stage into the outer stage, and just improvise, and hopefully it'll work. So definitely not something you want to have happen. But luckily it worked. And I noticed the mothership is turning over a bit in the direction of the Lathe lander, so I disable one of the nuclear engines so that the center of thrust is more in line with the center of mass. We are now about halfway through the entire speed run. Just slightly under that. So, and now the Joule 5 mothership is in orbit around Kerbin. So then I do a maneuver node, and I fiddle with this one for a while, I think. Actually, no, I don't, because I get a good encounter right off the bat, pretty much. And I have a good encounter, but then I think I spend a while trying to line it up with Tylo. Because I wanted to get a Tylo gravity assist to enter dual orbit, but it turned out that it wasn't necessary, and I had a whole bunch of fuel left over. But I tried anyway, and that took a bunch of time. So, in the end, I just quick load back to where I was, and then just do the maneuver node, because I decided it wasn't worth it. And I just circularize when I got there. And this is a long burn. Sorry, it just looks so odd seeing such an off-center lander just strapped to the side of a mothership like that. I know I built it, but I still can't get over the fact that it actually managed to work. And I do a second pass on it because the burn was so long. And another thing, which I was going to talk about, but I forgot about. Oh, I remember now. It's annoying because the pilots or probe cores at this point are not leveled up enough to have the hold maneuver function, so I have to manually turn the ship toward the maneuver node, which is annoying when your mothership is asymmetric. So I get the dual encounter, fine-tune it slightly. I wait till I'm closer to fine-tune it. And then I switch back to the Dres mission because I need to bring that home. And I do some more fine-tuning to ensure that I actually hit Kerbin and don't miss. Although I do have plenty of fuel left, so I could, in theory, just just do the circularization burn there. And I fled by the moon there a bit. And I come in at about 3.4 kilometers per second, which is doable. There's an exploit someone found, I think it was Kunjo Carl, where you can actually EVA a Kerbal and then get them like in orbit where the periapsis is like only a few hundred meters above the surface, then go to the tracking station, time warp until they're at periaps, fly them, and they won't actually burn up to re-entry heat. And it's a quicker way to re-enter, and it's better, especially now that we have personal parachutes for Kerbals. But I just decided not to use it because I had a perfectly good descent module and I wasn't up to trying something experimental this late into the run. So I realized that I've basically run out of electricity there, so I extend the solar panels. And I keep time warping towards Jules. So what can I talk about during this 30 seconds where I'm time warping? Well, I can talk about my computer setup. Well, my monitor is, I originally put it on top of this cardboard box right here so that I wouldn't be straining my neck, but I kept having to look down too far. So underneath the box, I added a dictionary and another thick book called The Timetables of History a while ago.
That's where that went.
And then on the sides of it are these two speakers, which I currently have my headphones plugged into. And I have my headphones on for absolutely no reason right now. I'm not even listening to anything, so I'll take them off and drop them on the floor for good measure. Almost 4 hours in, and I'm around Joule, and I do the braking burn. Valentina has been in that capsule for 2 years and 62 days, although that's only about 6 months in real life, because Kerbal days are shorter than Earth days, but Kerbal years are slightly longer than Earth years, in terms of number of days. So about 3.5 Kerbal years equals a real life year, I found out, approximately. It's not the exact number, but it's close enough. So anyway, I'm doing a plane change burn to match with Tylo, because I didn't get the Tylo capture burn, but a Tylo capture gravity assist, sorry, but I did get one that'll lower my orbit to that of Lathes with an apogee, whatever. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So I get a Lathe assist that actually gives me an encounter. No, I get a Val assist, which gives me an encounter with Lathe. And I'm going to go to Lathe first because the lander is the heaviest. And it's also off-center, so it'll be less annoying. So I do the course correction burn. I get the weird series of encounters. Although I've actually done like a quadruple gravity assist once, I think, at Joule. Joule's crazy. It's crazy good for gravity assist and stuff like that, especially if you have your patch conic setting turned up. And my computer just went off like, because I haven't moved my mouse in forever, so the recording might be a few seconds off, so I'll hopefully edit that. So we're captured at Lathe right now, and decouple! So I can use the decouple as a benchmark for when I have time, the audio, except I set it like a quarter of a second after we actually decoupled, but why am I obsessing with like timing everything perfectly? Anyway, so I transfer Valentina to the Lathe Lander and get her in, except, you know, it's dark at Periapps, so I can't actually tell where... Oh, I feel stupid now. The episode's been over for a long time, and yeah, I didn't realize it. So we'll land on Lathe in episode 3, and episode 3 will just be shorter and this one will be longer, so bye!